What happens to a man when the hunger for money replaces the hunger for meaning? When his veins no longer pulse with blood, but with numbers, profits, percentages, and projections? You've seen it. The glazed stare of the man scrolling through his trading app at midnight, refreshing for a flicker of dopamine. The hollow laugh of the one who says he's almost there, though he's been saying that for 10 years. You can hear it in his voice, the tremor of a gambler dressed as a businessman. He tells himself he's chasing freedom. But look closely, and you'll see the chains gleaming under the light of his ambition. They are not forged of iron. They are made of fear of scarcity, fear of losing status, fear of becoming invisible in a world that only sees what glitters. Money is not evil. It's one of the most efficient tools ever invented by man. It can build nations, fund revolutions, resurrect art, and protect families from ruin. But obsession is different. Obsession rots the spirit while pretending to polish it. The man who kneels before gold does not own it. It owns him. The tragedy is that most men do not seek wealth. They seek escape from their own helplessness. They do not want money. They want the illusion of control. And so they chase it endlessly, not as free agents, but as addicts justifying their dependency with sophisticated words: grind, hustle, vision. The truth: they are praying to an idol made of paper, hoping it will bless them with peace while it quietly drains their soul of it. You see, the addiction to money is not born in greed. It is born in fear. Fear that without it, you will be nothing. Fear that without it, no one will listen. Fear that without it, you will finally have to face the truth about who you are when no transaction defines you. A man's worth in this age is tallied by metrics that have nothing to do with his strength, his wisdom, or his loyalty. The digital ledger has replaced the moral compass. He refreshes his balance more than he reflects on his character. He trades his rest for relevance, his time for trophies no one will remember, and his peace for paper that disintegrates faster than his purpose. The addiction does not scream, it whispers. It tells him he's progressing. It congratulates him for being tired. It seduces him into thinking that exhaustion is evidence of greatness. And by the time he realizes it was all vanity, he's too deep in the game to admit defeat. There is a particular sickness among men who chase wealth without strategy. They believe movement equals mastery. They chase numbers without studying power. They accumulate without understanding leverage. They mistake possession for influence, and so they buy the cars, the suits, the symbols, each one a badge to disguise their insecurity. They think the display of wealth will grant them the respect that only presence can command. They think people are drawn to the shine, but people are drawn to authority. And authority does not come from what you own, it comes from what you can control. The powerful use money to move pieces on the board. The addicted use it to feel alive. That's why the powerful stay calm when markets crash. They never worship the currency, only mastered the leverage. The addict panics because he built his identity on something that can vanish overnight. Ask yourself, what is the difference between a man who uses money and a man used by it? The first views it as a means, the second as an identity. One treats it like a sword, sharp, precise, dangerous but obedient. The other treats it like oxygen, and so he suffocates without it. Watch the businessman who can't stop refreshing his phone during dinner. Watch the influencer counting likes as though they were paychecks. Watch the hustler who tells you he's free, yet cannot stop talking about money. They are all caught in the same hypnosis. They think freedom lies in accumulation, but true freedom is measured by what no longer controls you. When you can walk away from the deal and still feel whole, that is power. Until then, you are just another servant dressed in designer chains. And here lies the Machiavellian truth. Money was never meant to be worshipped. It was meant to be weaponized. The rulers of every age understood this. They did not chase gold. They commanded those who did. They let the masses exhaust themselves in the hunt, while they built the systems that print the reward. The powerful use money to buy silence, loyalty, and information. They know it cannot make them divine, but it can make them untouchable. They understand the one law most men never grasp: whoever decides the value of money controls those who crave it. And so while the common man checks his account, the strategist checks who sets the price. The difference between servant and sovereign is not wealth, it's perspective. But here's the danger. Every time a man defines himself by wealth, he kills a part of himself that cannot be bought. He learns to perform instead of to live, to impress instead of to build, to chase applause instead of legacy. The world rewards the illusion. It praises the grind, celebrates the burnout, romanticizes the sleepless chase as if insanity were proof of ambition. But the game is rigged. The longer you play without purpose, the more dependent you become on the very system you wanted to escape. You mistake motion for direction, effort for progress, income for impact. And when it finally collapses, when the market turns or your business fails, you don't just lose money, you lose identity, because you never had one outside of it. Men talk about getting rich as if wealth alone will save them from mediocrity. But if you were weak without money, you will still be weak with it. Money only amplifies what already exists. It gives the coward more things to hide behind, and the powerful more tools to execute their will. That's why some men rise with wealth, while others drown in it. One sees it as a weapon, the other as a wound dressed in gold. The tragedy is that most will never know the difference, because the addiction feels identical to purpose. It feels righteous, it feels productive, and that's what makes it so deadly. It destroys you with the illusion that you're winning. Because the truth is this: money does not corrupt. It reveals, it unmasks your hunger, your emptiness, your need for validation. It shows you what you worship when you finally have options. And once you taste its power, it begins to rewrite the circuitry of your mind. Every transaction becomes a hit, every deposit a dose. You no longer think, you calculate. You no longer rest, you wait for the next alert. Your humanity dissolves into performance metrics. And that, my friend, is where the real danger begins. The mind doesn't break all at once. It bends slowly, silently. Each time you measure your worth by what you can earn instead of what you can endure. That's how the addiction begins. Not with greed, but with arithmetic. The man who once counted moments now counts margins. The man who once chased meaning now chases multiples. His heartbeat syncs with market cycles. His moods rise and fall with the price of things he doesn't even need. He doesn't know it yet, but the currency has begun to reprogram him. Money doesn't only buy, it conditions. It rewards obedience, punishes patience, and teaches men to confuse motion with mastery. And soon, he isn't pursuing wealth, he's performing for it. Money alters the architecture of the male mind. It shifts the axis of his identity from being to having, from substance to status. He learns to equate attention with validation, and validation with survival. Every compliment becomes a transaction, every silence a threat. He starts to read people not as souls, but as opportunities, potential investments, collaborations, or liabilities. It's not his fault. The game is designed to make him this way. The more he chases the illusion of control, the more the system rewards him with symbols of it. Cars, accounts, possessions that depreciate faster than his integrity. And yet, he calls it progress. He thinks he's advancing. He doesn't realize he's being domesticated by the very thing he believes he's conquering. There's a cruel symmetry in how money rewires the brain. It stimulates the same circuits as love, faith, or addiction. It makes men worship chance and despise stillness. It teaches them that comfort equals safety, and silence equals death. The man who once dreamed of peace now cannot stand a moment of calm. He fills it with noise, notifications, deals, goals, until he forgets what silence even sounds like. He is haunted by his own stillness, because stillness feels like failure. This is how money enslaves the intelligent. It replaces the satisfaction of progress with the sensation of pursuit. It tricks the mind into mistaking anxiety for ambition. You will recognize this transformation in men who were once pure in intent. The artist who paints for profit instead of passion. The friend who suddenly becomes a salesman. The leader who once sought excellence but now seeks expansion. They will tell you they've evolved. But look closely. Their eyes move differently. They no longer see people. They scan them. They no longer listen. They wait for cues to pitch, to persuade, to profit. They start wearing the mask of productivity even when they are spiritually bankrupt. And when you speak to them about peace, they flinch as if calm were poison. They can't stop running because stillness would reveal how hollow the race truly is. The addiction to money is not just psychological, it's spiritual. It numbs the instincts that make a man human. Compassion feels inefficient. Loyalty feels expensive. Reflection feels like wasted time. He begins to distrust softness, to despise anything that cannot be monetized. Love becomes conditional. Friendship becomes strategic. Even God becomes transactional. prayers made not from faith but from negotiation. If you give me this deal, I'll believe. The tragedy is not that he sold his soul, it's that he can no longer locate it. His heart beats, but his conscience has gone quiet. He believes he's in control, yet everything he does is dictated by the need for more. There's a reason empires fall when their men become merchants. A nation's strength lies not in its gold, but in the discipline of those who hold it. When the mind worships currency, the soul forgets hierarchy. Pleasure replaces principle, comfort replaces conquest. The Romans learned this, the Venetians, the Ottomans. The moment wealth became the measure, decay began. History doesn't repeat, it recycles the same warning. Every civilization that mistook abundance for power was devoured from within. The addiction blinds the intelligent first, because they think they can control it. They think they are too strategic to be consumed. But that's what all addicts believe, that they can quit any time. And yet, beneath the ruin lies the blueprint of mastery. Money, in its purest form, is neutral. It can serve the wise or enslave the weak. It can amplify power or expose dependency. The difference is determined by a single question: do you own your desire, or does it own you? A sovereign man can walk away from profit to protect his peace. A slave will call it sacrifice because he has forgotten what freedom feels like. This is the great illusion of modern ambition, that men who chase money are powerful. No, the powerful man does not chase, he attracts. He bends value toward him because he understands leverage. He does not beg for opportunity, he creates scarcity. That is how rulers move. But the majority will never learn this distinction. They will keep chasing, keep sweating, keep trading their time for numbers that mean nothing outside their anxiety. They will keep calling it grind, as if pain without purpose were noble. They will burn through their youth and call it investment. They will stand before their mirrors, surrounded by symbols of success, and still feel small. And the worst part is, they will think that emptiness means they haven't made enough yet. That's how the system traps them forever, not with poverty, but with the illusion of progress. Because once the addiction fully sets in, a man no longer wants freedom, he wants validation. He doesn't want wealth, he wants proof that his suffering was worth it. And the world, cunning as it is, will gladly sell him that illusion for the rest of his life. But in the next part, you'll see what happens when the addiction matures, when money doesn't just influence a man's behavior, but rewires his beliefs about power, loyalty, and even love. That is when the real rot begins. The deeper a man falls into the pursuit of money, the more invisible his original self becomes. At first, he thinks he's mastering the system, learning its rules, memorizing its language, calculating its odds. But what he's really mastering is obedience. The mind that once questioned everything now bows to the rhythm of the market. It is a quiet submission, dressed in confidence. Every decision he makes, he justifies with the word strategy, though what he's truly following is compulsion. Watch him. His face may look calm, but his eyes are always scanning, searching for angles. He calls it opportunity, but it's hunger disguised as foresight. There's something tragic about the way money can mutate a man's perception. It doesn't only change what he values, it changes how he values. The moment he prices everything, he stops seeing anything. He cannot appreciate beauty without cost, nor loyalty without return. When his wife asks for time, he thinks in hours billed. When his friend needs help, he calculates opportunity cost. He calls it being practical, but it's not practicality, it's poverty of spirit. Because the mind addicted to currency cannot feel without accounting. And what is worse, it begins to equate generosity with weakness. Compassion feels inefficient, mercy becomes a liability. Slowly, morality becomes a math problem, solvable only when profitable. And yet, he still believes he is free. That's the masterpiece of the addiction. It convinces the slave he's a sovereign. He tells himself he works for no one, yet his every breath is synchronized with forces he cannot name. Interest rates, inflation, algorithms, market sentiment. The invisible masters whisper through headlines and metrics, dictating his emotions like a conductor leading a symphony of fools. When they say panic, he panics. When they say buy, he buys. When they say recover, he exhales. This is not freedom, this is choreography. The illusion of control performed by those who are too frightened to admit they've lost it. The transformation deepens when money begins to corrupt not only his choices, but his perception of power itself. He starts believing wealth equals dominance. He mistakes compliance for respect. envy for admiration, fear for authority. He walks into a room and assumes those who smile are loyal, when in truth, they're calculating what they can extract. The man addicted to money never understands loyalty, he only rents it. The moment his fortune falters, so does the affection of those around him. And when that happens, he calls them traitors, when in fact, he was the first to betray. He betrayed himself the day he replaced authenticity with assets, and thought the former could be substituted by the latter. But this decay runs deeper than social blindness. It infects his sense of reality. Money rewards the illusion of control so effectively that men begin to hallucinate power. They believe their decisions bend fate, when all they've truly mastered is consumption. They speak of manifesting while secretly fearing emptiness. They talk about mindset, but confuse arrogance with certainty. True power is invisible, quiet, and self-contained. It does not need applause. It does not depend on market conditions. It cannot be bought, only cultivated. But the addicted man cannot comprehend this. He craves external confirmation. His confidence is pegged to the volatility of his portfolio. The higher it rises, the louder he speaks. When it drops, so does his voice. Look at his relationships. Every bond becomes transactional. He cannot love without needing to own. He cannot admire without needing to surpass. He cannot celebrate another man's victory without secretly resenting it. That's how dependency breeds envy. It teaches the mind to interpret someone else's success as a personal threat. He no longer competes for mastery, he competes for validation. And when he loses, it isn't just a setback, it's humiliation. The kind that corrodes dignity from the inside out. The more he tries to out-earn his peers, the more he chains himself to their shadow. Competition becomes servitude, the scoreboard becomes his cage. And still, the world applauds him. They call him driven, they call him successful, they call him a man to emulate. But Machiavelli would call him predictable, because a man whose motivations can be purchased is not a man to fear, he is a man to control. The powerful don't waste time chasing wealth, they redirect the desires of those who do. They understand that every addict, no matter how ambitious, can be manipulated through the promise of more. The powerful offer rewards, the addicted supply obedience. That's why history is written not by the rich, but by those who decide what riches mean. They know the same truth the church, the kings, and the modern elites have all mastered. If you control belief, you control behavior, and money is belief, nothing more. The scariest part is that most men would rather die than admit this truth. They will defend the illusion to their last breath, because it gives their suffering purpose. To say I was addicted is to admit vulnerability. To say I was controlled is to confront helplessness. So they wrap their dependence in ambition and call it destiny. They post their wins, quote their idols, and chant affirmations of success, never realizing the more they declare freedom, the tighter their chains grow. Their success becomes their camouflage. No one suspects a prisoner who wears gold cuffs. But the mind cannot be fooled forever. There comes a moment when the silence between transactions becomes deafening. When he looks around his mansion and feels a strange emptiness he cannot name. When even the applause feels like noise. That's when the first crack appears, the moment when the man realizes he owns everything except himself. And from that crack begins a collapse so quiet, so internal, it cannot be measured in dollars or losses. It is the death of identity through the slow corrosion of meaning. And in the next part we'll descend into that collapse. How wealth, once a tool, becomes the very architecture of a man's cage. It begins when he can no longer feel joy without justification. When pleasure itself becomes suspicious unless it's earned through exhaustion. The man addicted to money eventually forgets how to live without the transaction that validates him. Even leisure must pay a dividend. Even rest must return a yield. He calls this discipline, but it's really fear. Fear of stillness, fear of being left behind, fear of discovering who he is without the constant hum of gain. What he once did for survival, he now does for identity. He wakes not because he is alive, but because the algorithm demands movement. Each day begins with numbers, not prayers. Each night ends with noise, not peace. The modern man's devotion has no altar, only notifications. And yet, beneath the surface, something darker begins to stir. The man who once worshipped money as salvation now begins to resent it as curse. He can't stop pursuing it, but he no longer enjoys the chase. Every milestone feels smaller, every reward shorter. The taste of victory fades faster than ever, forcing him to chase harder just to feel anything at all. This is no longer ambition, it's anesthesia. Money becomes the drug he takes to numb the wound it created. The more he earns, the less he feels. The less he feels, the more he earns. The cycle repeats until emotion itself becomes a liability. To feel deeply is to risk distraction. To love sincerely is to risk loss. And so he amputates tenderness, mistaking numbness for strength. Watch the eyes of these men. You'll notice it, the hollowness behind the smile, the tension in the jaw. They speak in numbers because numbers never question. They talk about investments, markets, growth, anything that can be measured, because what can't be measured terrifies them. You mention meaning, and they change the subject. You speak of truth, and they quote efficiency. They claim enlightenment, but what they've mastered is avoidance. The mind addicted to money becomes allergic to reflection, because reflection threatens to reveal the emptiness beneath achievement. He fears stillness, the way a fugitive fears silence. It reminds him of what's chasing him. And this is the paradox that destroys him. Money grants him the power to buy everything except the one thing he truly wants: peace. He thinks wealth will give him control, but control is the first thing he loses. The moment his emotions depend on his finances, he's no longer a ruler, but a servant. When the market rises, he smiles. When it falls, he breaks. His self-worth fluctuates with graphs and digits he cannot command. This is not a king, it's a hostage. The difference between the two is simple. A king commands the game. A hostage reacts to it. One builds systems, the other obeys them. And most men, though they look royal online, are ruled in silence by the numbers they worship. Every civilization creates its own form of slavery. Ours is voluntary. No chains, no masters, just desires disguised as dreams. The new slave doesn't toil in fields, he refreshes dashboards. He doesn't fear the whip, he fears irrelevance. He doesn't work for survival, he works to sustain an image. And that image costs more than he'll ever earn. The old world conquered men with armies. The new world conquers them with envy. The sword has been replaced by the screen. The battlefield is the algorithm. And every scroll deepens the addiction. Every ad whispers the same gospel: you are not enough yet. Buy more, earn more, prove more. But there's something the system didn't predict: awareness. The moment a man sees the pattern, he begins to separate from it. The addiction thrives on blindness. Once you recognize the loop, you weaken its grip. When a man realizes he's being programmed, a fracture forms in the illusion. He begins to question his impulses. Why do I need more? Who taught me that success must look this way? These questions are dangerous because they lead to rebellion, not against money, but against dependency. They awaken the ancient instinct that power is not measured in possessions, but in detachment. The ability to walk away without collapse, that is sovereignty. Still, the path from recognition to mastery is perilous. The mind resists freedom because addiction feels safer than uncertainty. The man may see the truth and still return to the chase, telling himself it's temporary. He may try to spiritualize his greed, dressing it in the language of purpose and service. But underneath, the hunger remains unchanged. He's not serving others, he's serving withdrawal. He wants to believe he's evolved, but evolution requires surrender, and surrender is the one thing money cannot buy. That is why even the wise struggle. They know what they must abandon, yet they fear the void that follows. Because when the addiction ends, silence begins, and silence is the one thing most men can't afford. But for the few who endure that silence, a strange clarity emerges. They begin to see money not as substance, but as smoke, visible, fleeting, powerful only in motion. They understand that it was never about owning, but about influencing. True power has never been measured in wealth, but in detachment. He who can move without greed commands those who cannot. He who sees money as tool becomes invisible to control, and invisibility, in a world addicted to appearance, is the ultimate form of dominance. The silence doesn't arrive peacefully. It creeps in, heavy and unfamiliar, after the noise of ambition finally burns itself out. At first, he mistakes it for boredom, then for depression, but it isn't either. It's withdrawal. The absence of constant pursuit exposes everything he tried to outrun. Without the chase, the man hears the echo of his own emptiness, a voice he's silenced for years under the rhythm of progress. He doesn't know what to do with stillness anymore. He feels like a soldier after the war, pacing through his mansion as if waiting for orders that will never come. The battle is over. yet the tension remains, and in that stillness, truth begins to speak, and it does not flatter. For the first time, he realizes how much of his identity was built around conflict. Every success required an enemy, even if he had to invent one. Competitors, critics, imagined doubters, it didn't matter. He needed resistance to justify movement. The addiction was never to money alone, it was to the struggle that made him feel alive. And now, without it, he feels hollow. He begins to see that he was not chasing wealth, but fleeing insignificance. His empire was a disguise, built to distract him from the unbearable simplicity of being. It's a brutal revelation that the man he became was created to hide the man he feared he was. This is the silent collapse Machiavelli warned of. When a ruler loses command not over others, but over himself. The symptoms are subtle but fatal. Restlessness replaces purpose. Reflection turns into regret. He stares at what he's built and feels no pride, only fatigue. He bought control but lost curiosity. He gained influence but misplaced innocence. His victories no longer taste like triumphs, they taste like obligations. He smiles in photos but envies the men who still hunger for something real. That's the paradox of success. It gives you everything except the feeling you chased it for. Most men cannot survive this stage. They fill the silence with new distractions. They start new projects, chase new investments, create new missions to escape the one confrontation they cannot win, the one with themselves. They will call it a new chapter or pivot, but it's the same addiction dressed in different language. The body stops craving money, but the mind still craves validation. So they turn ambition into identity again, convincing themselves it's evolution. The addiction mutates, finding subtler forms. The man who once chased profit now chases purpose with the same desperation. He becomes a monk of productivity, a philosopher of efficiency. He speaks of balance while secretly terrified of peace. But a few, very few, face the silence and endure it. They let the void strip them bare. They sit in the emptiness until every illusion collapses. The belief that power comes from ownership, that love comes from admiration, that value comes from proof. In that stillness, they see what most men die before understanding, that money never corrupted them, it merely mirrored their insecurities. It revealed what they truly feared: irrelevance, vulnerability, dependence. And once they face that truth without flinching, they are reborn. They no longer need to perform, they no longer need to prove. The addiction loses its teeth because there's nothing left to feed on. This transformation is not gentle. It tears the man apart from the inside. He mourns the version of himself that the world applauded, the hustler, the builder, the conqueror. He watches that persona dissolve, and for a time he feels naked, stripped of armor. But that's what liberation looks like before it hardens into clarity. True strength is not the ability to dominate others, it's the ability to live without needing to. The moment he stops craving applause, he becomes dangerous again, not to himself, but to the system that depended on his blindness. He begins to see patterns that others miss, motives behind markets, fear beneath wealth. His mind sharpens, not from hunger, but from stillness. Now, when he looks at money, he no longer sees salvation or status. He sees architecture, a mechanism, a tool. He sees how power flows through economies the way blood moves through veins, controlled by few, believed by many. He realizes the game was never about possession, it was about direction. Those who control the flow control the world. The rich man counts what he owns, the powerful man controls what others chase. That is the secret hidden beneath centuries of ambition. The master is not the one with the gold, but the one who defines its value. And so the silence transforms from torment to weapon. He learns to use it. He no longer reacts to wealth, he maneuvers it. He invests not for validation, but for positioning. He moves like a shadow, calm, deliberate, impossible to read. The same system that once enslaved him now becomes his instrument. He is no longer chasing numbers, he is orchestrating outcomes. The addiction that once ruled him becomes an insight that guides him. He doesn't need to dominate others, he simply moves where they cannot see. But here lies the next evolution, the one most never reach, when detachment itself becomes dangerous. Because once a man realizes money is a tool, he must decide how to use it, and for what purpose. Some will use it to build, others to destroy, and some will play God with it, reshaping destinies as if the world were their private game board. In the next part, we'll enter this threshold, the domain of the strategist, where detachment turns into power and money becomes the silent weapon of kings. The silence doesn't just expose him, it dismantles him. It peels away every illusion he mistook for identity until what remains is raw, unsettling truth. He realizes that the empire he built was not made of wealth, but of wounds. Every business venture, every late night, every risk taken wasn't just ambition, it was therapy. It was the mind's way of proving to itself that it mattered. But without the noise, without the chase, he's left with the one thing he can't manipulate, his reflection. And there, he finds a stranger, a man who knows the mechanics of wealth, but not the meaning of peace. A man who's conquered every battlefield except the one inside his own head. This is where transformation begins, but also where madness often takes root. The silence offers two paths: mastery or despair. Those who cannot bear to look inward will run back to the chaos. They will convince themselves that movement equals life, and that stillness is death. They will rejoin the race, louder and busier than ever, preaching discipline while hiding dependence. But those who stay, those who stare into that silence without flinching, begin to see something terrifying and liberating: the truth that money was never power. The real power was attention. Whoever controls a man's attention controls his decisions. And for years, his attention was sold to the highest bidder. He sees now how the addiction began, not with greed, but with distraction. Every ad, every algorithm, every voice that told him to grind was designed to keep his focus external. Because a man who looks outward can be steered, but a man who looks inward, he becomes unpredictable, dangerous. You cannot enslave a man who no longer seeks validation. The moment he reclaims his attention, the entire machinery of manipulation begins to lose grip. He stops responding to fear. He stops reacting to temptation. And the world, confused by his stillness, begins to whisper, "What happened to him?" What happened is simple: he woke up. When Machiavelli wrote of rulers, he understood that power was never about violence, it was about control of perception. Modern men think they're fighting the world for success, but in truth, they're fighting their own programming. Money is the world's most elegant trap because it rewards obedience with illusion. It makes you feel in charge while ensuring you remain dependent. But the awakened man starts to notice the strings. He watches people react to markets like puppets to the pull. He listens to the panic in their voices when their screens flicker red, and he feels nothing. Not arrogance, clarity. Because once you've seen the pattern, the game becomes predictable. And predictability, in a world driven by emotion, is invincibility. The shift is subtle but irreversible. The man who was once addicted to gain begins to think in structure. He no longer measures wealth in accumulation but in influence. He learns to weaponize patience, the rarest currency in a frantic world. While others rush to chase, he observes. While others seek validation, he collects information. He invests not in profit, but in positioning. Every move becomes psychological. He doesn't need to dominate markets, he manipulates mood, because now he understands that money follows emotion, and emotion follows perception. To master money, one must first master perception, and perception begins in the human mind. This is the threshold where ambition becomes strategy. The man begins to see that true power has no urgency. The king moves slower than the merchant because the king is not reacting, he's dictating tempo. He no longer competes with other men, he studies them. He learns their triggers, their fears, their dependencies. He doesn't fight greed, he uses it. He doesn't suppress desire, he redirects it. To him, the addicted masses are not rivals but resources. They are the energy that fuels the system he now intends to command. He understands, finally, why the powerful never panic. They know the addiction of others guarantees their control. Yet this realization comes with a new danger: the intoxication of detachment. To see the world as a chessboard is to risk forgetting that the pieces are human. The strategist must decide, will he use this knowledge to liberate or to dominate? Will he rebuild himself as a master of leverage or a manipulator of souls? For the same silence that birthed wisdom can also breed cruelty. The man who feels nothing can either become divine in his discernment or monstrous in his precision. That is the razor's edge of awakening. And so, as he sits in the stillness, he begins to craft a new philosophy. Money will serve him now, but never own him again. He will use it to move unseen, to build quietly, to influence without display. He will operate through systems, not sentiment, but deep within, a shadow forms. a question whispered by the silence itself. Now that you are free, what will you do with the chains of others? Power begins quietly. It doesn't announce itself with wealth or noise, but with the ability to move men without their knowing. The man who has broken free from addiction becomes dangerous because he no longer plays the same game. While others chase outcomes, he studies incentives. He knows that most men can be predicted by their hunger, whether for validation, survival, or glory. Money to him now is not a goal but a language. Every transaction is a sentence, every investment a declaration. He speaks it fluently, not with greed but with precision. The powerful don't shout commands, they adjust conditions. They don't compete for attention, they redirect it. That's how rulers emerge from the ruins of the addicted. He begins to understand what Machiavelli meant when he wrote that men are driven more by fear than by gratitude. The addict fears losing money. The strategist uses that fear to steer him. When a man's emotions are tied to his income, his loyalty is already purchased. This is the invisible hierarchy of power. The rich chase returns, the poor chase relief, and the wise control both by shaping perception. Watch how easily entire populations can be moved by whispers of scarcity or hope. A single phrase, market crash, inflation rise, tax cut, and millions react in unison. Not because they're rational, but because they're conditioned. Power lies not in wealth itself, but in the ability to control the meaning of wealth. The strategist moves differently. He no longer argues or persuades, he plants. Every idea, every symbol, every subtle shift in tone becomes part of a larger architecture. While others post, he positions. While others seek attention, he controls narrative. He understands that perception is the most valuable real estate in the modern world, and he begins to own it. He invests not in businesses, but in beliefs. Because once a belief takes root, it creates behavior, and behavior creates profit. Most men never realize they are not chasing money. They are executing someone else's plan for it. The strategist designs those plans. This is where morality begins to blur. To control the addicted, one must understand them, and understanding breeds a kind of dark empathy. He knows their desires intimately, because he once shared them. He knows what they crave, what they fear, what they worship. He can sell them hope wrapped in urgency, fear disguised as safety, and greed repackaged as self-improvement. And because he no longer believes in the illusions himself, he wields them with mastery. But each time he does, something within him hardens. Detachment sharpens into distance. Strategy becomes isolation. He finds himself surrounded by admirers, yet untouched by affection. The more he commands, the less he connects. That is the cost of clarity. It purifies the mind, but sterilizes the heart. To maintain balance, he begins to play the double role, philosopher and manipulator. The philosopher seeks order, the manipulator maintains it. One builds systems to create stability, the other maintains illusion to preserve obedience. He justifies this duality with reason. Men need guidance. Chaos must be managed, and he is not wrong. The masses do require structure. Without direction, their fear turns to destruction. But deep within, he wonders, when does guidance become control? When does protection turn into domination? The addict within him whispers that he enjoys being obeyed, and the philosopher answers that obedience is necessary for peace. This internal debate is the mark of those who ascend beyond addiction. They no longer serve money, but they must now guard against the intoxication of power. He learns that the highest form of wealth is influence without exposure, to shape outcomes while remaining unseen, to be the whisper behind decisions, the idea behind movements, the architect whose name is never spoken. Invisibility becomes his fortress. He no longer flaunts success, he conceals it. He moves funds, people, and information like pieces on a chessboard. The powerful do not display, they distribute. They understand that the moment attention finds them, leverage dissolves. So they train others to crave the spotlight while they operate in the shadows. The addicts become actors, the strategist writes the script. But there is one danger he cannot escape: loneliness. For when you see the mechanics of human desire too clearly, connection becomes difficult. Every compliment sounds like calculation. Every friendship feels conditional. He starts to realize that knowing too much about motives corrupts innocence. He has become immune to manipulation, but also resistant to intimacy. The silence that once gave him freedom now becomes a kind of exile. He stands atop the hierarchy he once served, but finds no equals there, only reflections of his former self. That is the paradox of mastery. The higher you ascend, the fewer people can meet your gaze without flinching. Still, he doesn't turn back. He knows that to lead, one must bear the weight of solitude. He refines his detachment into discipline, turning emptiness into observation. Every conversation becomes reconnaissance, every deal a test of psychology. He sees how easily men trade integrity for comfort, how predictably they surrender agency for security. He does not despise them, he simply understands that this is the human design. And understanding design means one thing: control. He no longer needs to fight for it, he simply applies it. But beneath that calm precision, a storm brews. The more he manipulates systems, the more he begins to question their purpose. Is control the end, or merely the means? Is influence true power, or just another illusion, grander but equally hollow? These questions begin to haunt him, not as doubt, but as prophecy. For even kings who rule without chains eventually face the final addiction, the need to be remembered: immortality. It begins as a whisper in the mind of every man who has tasted real power. When you have outgrown hunger, when money bends instead of blinds, when obedience becomes instinctive around you, what's left to chase? Not pleasure, not security. You begin to crave something more elusive: permanence. The illusion that your name, your influence, your presence will outlive you. It is the final seduction of power, the belief that you can defeat time. But time cannot be defeated. It can only be deceived, and that deception becomes the last addiction. He tells himself it's not vanity, it's legacy. But legacy is only vanity with better grammar. The man who once sought wealth for control now seeks remembrance for meaning. He wants to etch himself into eternity, to make the world pronounce his name long after his voice has gone silent. It's a noble disguise for the same hunger that once ruled him, because beneath it lies the same fear that began this entire descent. The fear of being forgotten. The same insecurity that made him chase money now makes him chase immortality. Different pursuit, same emptiness. He has conquered men, systems and markets, but not oblivion. He starts building monuments, companies, philosophies, even ideologies to outlive himself. Each one becomes an altar to his former self. He surrounds himself with disciples who echo his thoughts, replicate his strategies, carry his language into the future. He doesn't realize he's building not an empire, but a mausoleum. Every structure he raises becomes a tomb for the version of him that can't die peacefully. The strategist, for all his detachment, begins to crave witnesses. He wants the world to see what he's built. He wants history to bow, but history bows to no man. It remembers what it chooses, and it forgets without mercy. This is the tragedy of the enlightened. They escape one illusion only to be seduced by a higher one. The addiction returns in a more sophisticated form. He is no longer enslaved by the need for money, but by the need for significance. He begins to calculate not in dollars, but in decades. He trades wealth for myth, and in doing so, he forgets what peace once felt like. The silence that once set him free now feels like erasure. The same stillness that gave him clarity now feels like punishment. It's as if the universe itself mocks him, showing him that even detachment when worshipped becomes a prison. He studies history's great men and finds the same disease. Conquerors, prophets, inventors, all seeking to outlast their flesh. Caesar had his empire, Alexander his legend, Machiavelli his doctrine. Yet all of them learned the same truth in the end. You cannot own eternity. You can only rent a moment within it. The powerful die twice, first in body, then in memory. And the second death is the crueler one, because it arrives after you've already believed you escaped it. The strategist knows this intellectually, yet the heart refuses to accept it. He tells himself he's different, that his work is too vast to fade, that his influence is too deep to be erased. This is the final illusion, the one even wisdom bows to. To satisfy it, he starts manipulating perception again. Not for profit this time, but for immortality. He begins curating his image, sculpting how the world will remember him. He edits history in real time, shaping narratives, burying errors, polishing imperfections. He tells his followers to carry the vision, as if they could preserve a ghost. But memory is not loyal. It belongs to the living, not the dead. The more he tries to control it, the faster it slips away. He sees imitators rise using his words, his methods, his symbols, until he becomes a template instead of a man. His name turns into currency, spent freely by those who never knew him. This is immortality's curse. You are remembered, but not understood. And yet, he cannot let go. The strategist, who once moved entire systems without flinching, now trembles before the one force he cannot negotiate with: time. He can't threaten it, buy it, or outthink it. He can only watch as it erodes everything he's built, piece by piece, until even his empire begins to look like dust. For the first time, fear returns, not of poverty, but of irrelevance. The same fear that once made him chase money, now makes him chase meaning. The game has changed, but the stakes are the same. He still cannot sit with himself without needing the world to watch. But there is another path, one that only a few discover, usually too late. It is not to fight time, but to vanish within it, to accept impermanence as liberation, to build not for remembrance, but for resonance. The man who understands this doesn't leave monuments, he leaves movement. He doesn't seek to be known, he seeks to be felt. His power is no longer in his name, but in the ripples of his actions, the invisible ways he reshapes the world. This is the rarest evolution, the moment when legacy transforms from ego to essence, when the man no longer seeks to be remembered, but to remain useful beyond recognition. Yet even that clarity is fragile, because to vanish completely, he must release the final possession, the self. And few men, even after conquering wealth and power, are ready to let go of their identity. It is the last crown, the final addiction. The strategist has one more lesson to face: the art of disappearance. Disappearance is not death. It is the highest form of strategy. To vanish by choice, to withdraw your image from a world addicted to noise, is to achieve a kind of sovereignty few ever taste. The man who once dominated systems now studies the art of absence. He learns that presence, when overexposed, becomes predictable, and predictability is vulnerability. So he begins to erase himself, not out of fear, but precision. The addicted chase visibility, the powerful dissolve into invisibility. He no longer needs recognition, for recognition is merely permission granted by the crowd. To be unseen yet still effective, that is godlike. He stops speaking in public, stops seeking acknowledgement. He learns to operate through proxies, ideas, symbols, and silence. Each gesture becomes deliberate, each word costly. When he speaks, it's never to prove, only to move. He no longer performs, he directs. Influence flows from him like current through unseen wires. Those who once envied him now speak of him as myth, unable to tell if he's ascended or vanished. And that uncertainty, that ambiguity itself, becomes his greatest weapon. Because when people can't define you, they can't predict you, they can't control you, he becomes not a man, but a presence that lingers in rooms he's never entered. Yet to disappear from the world is easier than to disappear from the self. The strategist now faces a different kind of enemy, his own reflection. He has shed every identity built on possession, power, or legacy, yet the ghost of I still haunts him. The desire to be someone remains, whispering in subtler forms, "You are the man who transcended. You are the enlightened one." Ego dies loudly, but resurrects quietly. It disguises itself as virtue, as purpose, as wisdom. It clings to the idea that being nothing is still being something. This is the final trap, the illusion that one can possess even detachment. He realizes that control, his oldest companion, is the last illusion left to conquer. Every empire he built, every strategy he executed, was founded on control of men, of money, of outcomes. It gave him order in a chaotic world. But now, standing beyond all systems, he sees that control was never real. It was a story the mind told itself to feel safe. The world moves through patterns far older and greater than any plan. What he once called mastery was merely alignment, temporary, conditional, fragile. The irony of power is that it vanishes the moment you stop fearing its loss. The only true authority left is surrender. So he begins the final dismantling, not of wealth or empire, but of self. He watches his thoughts as if they belong to another. He studies his desires and laughs at their predictability. He feels anger, greed, nostalgia, and recognizes them as remnants of an identity he no longer serves. He learns the difference between silence and emptiness. Silence is presence without noise. Emptiness is presence without attachment. And in that distinction, he begins to glimpse freedom, not the kind bought or built, but the kind remembered. The freedom he sought his entire life was never outside him. It was buried beneath his ambition. At this stage, most men would crumble. To see the self dissolve is terrifying. To lose control willingly feels like self-destruction. But for him, it feels like revelation. The more he lets go, the more power he gains, not power over others, but over his own perception. He begins to move without effort, decide without doubt, speak without fear. His actions no longer emerge from hunger, but from harmony. He becomes efficient in the way nature is efficient, precise, silent, inevitable. He understands now that dominance was never about force. It was about alignment with the unseen rhythm of life. He tests this new state in the real world. Deals still flow to him, but he no longer chases them. Opportunities appear, yet he declines most without hesitation. People seek him out for advice, and his answers become shorter, sharper, more timeless. The man who once gave commands now gives presence. Others feel calmer around him, not because he tries to influence them, but because he no longer needs to. He has become what every addict secretly wants: ungovernable peace. The type of peace that cannot be purchased, imitated, or inherited. The type that makes others restless because it reminds them of what they've lost. And yet, even this peace must be tested, for there remains one final fear: the fear of disappearing completely, of leaving no trace, no echo, no mark. The strategist wonders if he can surrender even that. Can he walk away from everything, his name, his legacy, his legend, and still feel whole? Can he dissolve without mourning? If he can, then he will achieve what no conqueror, no philosopher, no prophet ever has: to exist without identity, to influence without ownership, to act without attachment. That is the final victory. He begins to sense it, the slow erasure of self. It's not violent, it's almost merciful. The identity that once held him together begins to dissolve like smoke in water, leaving behind only awareness. He watches his thoughts form and vanish without resistance, realizing that even the urge to control them was part of the illusion. What he mistook for discipline was merely refined fear. The man who once needed to conquer the world now understands that the world was never his to conquer. It was always reflecting him, mirroring his hunger, his beliefs, his obsessions. Every victory, every downfall, every lesson was his own mind projecting outward and then punishing itself for not finding peace. He stands before a mirror one last time, but the reflection no longer feels personal. The features are familiar, but the story is gone. He sees not himself, but a pattern, an instrument life used to observe itself. And in that instant, the question that haunted him for years, who am I without money, power, or control, no longer matters. There is no answer because there is no one left to ask. The silence that once threatened to consume him has now become his native language. For the first time, he isn't thinking, planning, or seeking. He is simply being. The world around him continues its frenzy. Men still run, still chase, still trade exhaustion for validation. He observes without judgment. He understands now that nothing needs to be corrected because everything is already playing its role. The greedy sustain the machine, the fearful maintain order, the ambitious preserve motion. Each archetype keeps the illusion alive, and he, no longer a participant, moves among them like a ghost of clarity. His calm disturbs them because they cannot name it. They mistake it for arrogance, indifference, mystery, but it is none of those. It is simply absence, the space that remains when need has died. He learns to walk through the world without leaving fingerprints. His words carry no persuasion, yet they change those who hear them. His gaze no longer seeks reaction, yet it disarms pretense. He no longer plans, yet everything unfolds with precision. The paradox becomes complete. The less he tries to control, the more everything aligns in his favor. Fortune follows those who no longer chase it because detachment bends reality toward them. The universe respects silence more than struggle. It recognizes mastery, not by what a man commands, but by what he no longer requires. And though he moves through cities and conversations, he remains untouched. He sees money change hands, power shift, empires rise and fracture, all of it rhythmic, predictable. He senses how the same hunger that once ruled him animates everyone else, like a current they can't see but obey instinctively. He no longer condemns it, he simply watches. Observation itself becomes worship, not of wealth, not of God, but of truth. the quiet intelligence moving behind all things. To live in alignment with that current is the only real victory. In the rare moments when the old world tries to pull him back, when someone mentions his name, when his fortune or legacy surfaces in conversation, he feels no pride, no shame, no attachment, just distance. The echoes of his former life reach him like the sound of waves from a shore he no longer lives on. He doesn't deny it, but he doesn't return to it either. He lets the noise pass through him. He has become what Machiavelli only hinted at in theory, a man who understands power so completely that he no longer needs to use it. The transformation is invisible. The addict, the conqueror, the strategist, all gone. What remains is presence, pure, unadorned, immeasurable. He is not rich, not poor, not powerful, not humble. He simply is. And in that being, there is a freedom no empire can rival, no doctrine can define, no system can corrupt. The man who once worshipped money has transcended it, not by renunciation, but by realization. He finally understands that wealth was never meant to be stored or displayed. It was meant to pass through him, like wind through open hands. And so he moves forward, unseen and unhurried, as if walking through the fabric of the world itself. Where others seek meaning, he embodies it. Where others strive for permanence, he dissolves into the flow. Nothing binds him now. No possession, no title, no illusion of self. Only awareness remains, silent and infinite, watching itself unfold across the endless exchange of life. If you've made it this far, it's because a part of you already knows this truth. Most men don't chase money for freedom, they chase it out of fear. Fear of being nothing, fear of being forgotten, and that fear becomes their master. Now tell me in the comments, are you ready to own your ambition instead of being owned by it? Are you willing to build wealth without losing your soul? If this message touched you, if it made sense, write in the comments, I control desire. Let's see how many here are truly ready to break free from the illusion of success. And don't forget, keep watching the next video. It's important, much more than you imagine. See you there.